Let's get started. Bring the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is the Municipal Land Use Board meeting of the Borough of River Edge. Today is Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. Time now is 7:32 p.m. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to Borough Council chambers unavailability and is in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this remote meeting was published in the Bergen Record on October 6, 2022, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last 4 digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address clearly prior to making a public comment. With that, I turn it over to Ms. Steinle. Good evening. Would you call the roll, please?
Good evening. Thank you. Mr. Mayor is excused tonight. Mr. Caslin?
Here.
Ms. Boland?
Here.
Mr. Merman?
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer?
Here.
Mr. Cray?
Here.
Mr. Arkelian?
Here.
Councilman Kanigo is absent at the moment. Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Yeah. Mr. Esposito?
Here.
And Mr. Bastide.
Here.
All right, also present, Mr. Behrens and Mr. Costa.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Steinle. First item on our agenda this evening is approval of minutes. We have a draft set of minutes for the meeting of May 10th, 2023, circulated to the board for review prior to the meeting. Open it to the board for comments and or questions on those draft minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Merman.
I have one on the May 10th meeting. I have one correction. It was left out, a deletion. It's on the first page, under memorialization for Evergreen Medical. The paragraph starts adequate parking, so on and so forth, down to the third line, what reads proposed sign package. Insert the words requested engineering report regarding retaining walls received, period. That was the engineering report we asked from Mr. Barrett, and he did submit it, and I want the record to show that.
Okay.
Okay, can you just repeat that real quick? You wanted what put in there, Mr. Merman?
The wording that said requested engineering report regarding retaining walls received. Okay?
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, thank you. That's the only comment I had on those meeting minutes.
Okay. Anyone else with comments?
I do. I have some comments on the 524 meeting. I'm not sure what page it is. It's something I said, which is final questions, comments from the board.
We're doing the 5-10 minutes at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought it was all any minutes.
Nope, we're doing the 5-10.
Mhm.
Any other comments, questions on the 5-10? May 10th minutes? Okay, I actually, Lisa, I think the spelling you were looking for, page 8 is Ciancia, Ciancia Brothers.
No,
Okay, thank you.
And the motion to adjourn, Ms. Boland's name is missing an N on the last page.
Oh, still on May 10th?
Still on May 10.
Okay.
Wait, can you do that again? What was missing?
There's an N missing from Ms. Boland's name on the last
Oh,
page.
okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
See it. Right, I should know that.
Okay, with that, any further comments, questions on the minutes for May 10th? Okay, there being none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, I think I got Ms. Boland as a first and Mr. Gibbons as a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
You doing a vote? Are we doing a voice or a roll call?
We can do a voice vote, but Mr. Cray and Mr. Esposito were absent.
Ah, okay, very good. Okay, those eligible to vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, very good. The next item on the agenda are the May 24th minutes, our meeting from May 24th. Draft set of those minutes were circulated for review prior to the meeting. I open it to the board for comments or questions.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of very minor comments or changes.
Okay,
Okay. Second page, at least under the continuation of old business, second page would be, I guess, the second paragraph that starts with Mr. Sarlo appearing and so on. The second line reads his testimony at. I think we've got to clean that up a little bit. Should read the extended 10:30 PM curfew. Lisa, did you follow that, Lisa?
I got it. Yep.
Yep, okay. All right. On the same page, Lisa, if we go down to, there's an item number 1. There's one paragraph, the third paragraph reads Mr. Riki. If we go to the second line, that says 5/10/24 meeting due to the, I think we have to insert the word extended before the 10 o'clock curfew.
Okay.
Okay, the one other one I have is the one on final questions or comments from the board. You go down to Ms. Boland, and I think that I'll let her address that one since she raised it earlier.
Yes, so that's exactly where I was going, to that section where at the end it says height when 35 feet is required, and they are asking for 50. I recall saying it was 52 feet plus a parapet.
Oh, okay. 52 feet plus parapet. Okay.
That was it.
I have, on the same one, I have, if you're done, I have a comment also. Actually, it's a clarification. Right now, it reads, other than being a big, and there's a blank, a big what, I'm not certain, or if you meant the word big, asked for a height of 35 feet. Can we clear that up?
I think
not-
I did say a big ask. Like, in other words, they were asking for,
Yeah, I think it's in there,
A
right?
large
Big
fan.
ass.
Oh, okay, all right, so that's what you meant, okay, all right, I thought there was a word missing, okay. All right, that's fine, that's great. Let's see if I had any others. I think that's it, and let me keep, yeah. Lisa, I must comment to you personally. You did a super job on these minutes for this meeting. And I don't think I could have done a job as good. You're to be recognized for that. And please keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Merman. I
okay.
appreciate it.
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Mr. Mervin. Any other comments, questions from the board on the minutes for May 24? Okay, with the revisions just discussed, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boland. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cray, thank you. Ms. Steinle? Can we just have a list of who's eligible to vote on these minutes?
This voice vote, but everyone but Mr. Esposito.
Everyone, Mr. Esposito, okay. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained, other than Mr. Esposito? Very well. Thank you very much. Those minutes from May 24th are approved. We're going to move the agenda items around slightly. The discussion on the request for reconsideration of Dark Star Development LLC, 335 Johnson Avenue, Block 1405, Lot 3. We're going to move that to the end of the meeting behind new business. So we're going to proceed now to our next agenda item, which is for this evening, we're going to move on to completeness review. The applicant is Grill House LLC, trading as Mado Cafe. Property is 570 Kinderconnect Road, Block 804, Lot 2. This is a proposed new restaurant seeking a approval for a food handler's license and potential parking and sign approvals. Good evening, Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thomas J. Barrett for the applicant. I think everybody knows the site itself. It was formerly occupied by Dante's Deli. The current operators of the Mado restaurant, occupying the southern portion of the building, would like to expand into the northern portion in a cafe which would serve lighter fare than in the restaurant. And it would also feature desserts, etc. There are no changes proposed to the site itself. No changes to the parking, no changes to the structure other than the improvements that are proposed, the new awning and the sign. There are interior renovations that are actually almost completed. But for the fact that the space is not accessible from the other than the kitchen, which is a shared kitchen. But patrons from the restaurant can't go directly into the cafe. They would have to go outside and then inside. Other than that, it was my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Behrens, had there been a connection, I don't believe we'd be here this evening for site plan approval. It would be considered just one restaurant. But because of the separation, it is in fact considered two separate restaurants. The parking variance required is no greater than that which was granted in 2015. And the reason for that is that at that time, the restaurant was approved for 120 seats. In actuality, they only have 102 seats. Taking that into account and the fact that the deli no longer exists, instead we're proposing 30 additional seats. And then with the two upper floors, one occupied by a dance studio and the other by offices, the
No
total
biting.
requirement now is 67 spaces.
No biting.
Sorry? Oh, you were talking to your cat.
I got him mute, sorry.
That's all right. I all of a sudden hear no biting.
He's making me crazy.
No problem. Anyway, so the total requirements under the ordinance as was submitted on sheet marked option B shows that 67 are required and 51 are provided. In 2015, the planning board approved the application when 68 seats were required. The same 51 were provided, and they granted the variance at that time. So we're actually, under this proposal, required one less space than was required under the prior approval. That's the basis. I do have some testimony from the operator of the cafe, as well as the gentleman who family member who also performed most of the alterations, et cetera, with respect to what will be going on in the cafe.
So if I could just add to Tom's commentary. So the evolution of this project and why it is before the board is that initially in about April 2020, just when all the COVID stuff started happening, there was a proposal basically for the existing Mado restaurant to simply expand into the Dante's space. And that was approved because we felt that there wasn't a need for a new food handler's license, and it was an expansion of an existing restaurant. There was no variance requirement for, the additional 30 spaces that were being proposed. And as time went on, evidently there was some miscommunication, work had started, and the project had changed where it was no longer, extra seating for the restaurant, but it sort of evolved into a new business. But they did have a shared kitchen, but everything else was separate. There was a separate customer entrance, separate bathroom, separate menu, et cetera. So ultimately, I felt that it was best to come to the board as a new business is what it seemed to be. And that's the reason that we're here. And again, I think it was because of this miscommunication, partially during COVID, and also just, I think at the building department in general, that they went ahead with some of the work. Alan, speaking on behalf of the applicant here this evening, was, very helpful in coordinating things. So I appreciate his efforts, and Mr. Barrett certainly. So that's just a brief explanation as to how we got here.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Steinle?
So prior to the meeting, I did review the proofs provided by the applicant and found them to be sufficient for the board to have jurisdiction to hear the application tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Behrens, any comments on the completeness aspects?
In terms of the application materials submitted, they include the typical forms, floor plans for the proposed restaurant space, survey site plans, so they appear to be sufficient and complete for the board to move forward this evening.
Okay. Mr. Costa, any comments on the completeness aspects from your perspective?
None, Mr. Chairman, nothing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There's no improvements, there's no expansion, there's existing building, existing parking, everything.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, comments or questions from the board on completeness? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion on the completeness of this application.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes,
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito,
yes,
and Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our next agenda item, new business. The applicant is Grill House LLC, trading as Mado Cafe, 570 Kindercamack Road, Block 804, Lot 2. A proposed new restaurant in the formerly occupied by Dante's Delicatessen. Application is for a food handler's license, potential parking, and sign approval. Once again, good evening, Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. At this time, perhaps it's best to actually start out with what the proposed use is, and then we can go into the other details. So I would like to, and again, I apologize, Mr. Kuruglia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Howard, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. All right, if you could just tell the board briefly the difference between the restaurant and the cafe.
The cafe is just more of a simplified menu. There's no like,
I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Right. you have to
I'm
swear
sorry,
me.
I'll just have to swear you in. All right, if you could please
Apologize.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes,
Okay, and please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
it's Eric Kroglian. Last name is Korogluyan. And you said my address?
Or your town of residence, that's fine.
Cliffside Park, Fairview, sorry.
Thank you.
So at this point, if you would, as you were starting, the difference between the two.
It's just more like a dumbed down menu. It's a simpler menu, and it's like no tablecloths, so it's not like it's more like a cafe, and it's just not like how the whole restaurant has a tablecloths and everything like that. And we're not gonna do all that. It's more just like a dumbed down menu, a simpler menu, and it's still gonna be like sit down and eat and everything, but not like a formal like fine dining establishment.
And the hours of operation,
It's gonna be from 11 to like 9:30.
which is the same as the restaurant, is that correct?
Yes.
And you've heard me state, and Mr. Burns stated as well. So this is a shared kitchen,
Yeah.
and so you'll have the same cooks who are working on the restaurant would work on the cafe as well, or?
Yes.
And do you anticipate also offering, in light of the pandemic, will there also be available though takeout if people want it?
Yeah, we're considering it.
Okay, but your primary is to occupy those 30 seats with a less formal menu.
Yeah, of course.
And how long have you been operating the restaurant?
For about a year now.
Okay, and before that, it was your parents.
Yes.
And have you had any issues in terms of the parking? Has there ever been any patrons who said they couldn't find a parking space or that they had difficulty using the parking spaces that exist?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
Okay. I don't believe that I have any more questions for Mr. Caruglia.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Let me open it to the board for questions to Mr. Caruglia. Actually, first before that, Mr. Barron's, any questions or comments from you?
Just a few quick ones. I think we got the nature of the use, and again, it's a permitted use in the zone. They don't need any relief for parking. There is a proposed sign for the name of the new restaurant. One issue I had with that is, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Mr. Brown. I was going to go over that with Mr. Yilmaz, with Alan, about the sign and the
Okay, so
canopy. So it's up to you, whatever, if you want to bring it up now, that's obviously up to you.
why don't you, well, I don't have any questions then for this applicant. I didn't realize you had another more testimony to go through. So, yeah. One more.
Okay, so let me turn to the board then. Mr. Gibbons, any questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeffer.
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Craig.
I am good.
All right, Ms. Boland,
No questions.
Mr. Bustine,
No questions.
Mr. Esposito,
None.
Mr. Merman.
None.
Okay, Mr. Arkalian.
No, we're good.
Okay, very good. Mr. Barrett, turn it back to you.
All right, at this point, I'd like to call upon Alan Yilmaz, please. And this time, I will let Ms. Stanley swear you in.
All right, if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And please state your name, your last name, and provide your town of residence for the record.
Alan Yilmaz, Cliffside Park.
Thank you.
So, Alan, you heard Mr. Behrens describe the journey, so to speak. So all along that journey, though, you did get permits from the borough and approvals for the work that you were doing, renovating the interior. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also, as part of the proposal, it does call for a sign over the front door. And that is shown on the document that was just provided to the board today, which shows the proposed sign, and it is within the 20 square foot provided by the ordinance. Is that correct?
Looking at it now, yes.
Now, also though, being proposed is an awning across the old storefront in its entirety. And that appears to be larger than is permitted by ordinance. But you had submitted these plans to the borough some time ago, is that correct?
Yes.
And to whom did you submit them?
Just drop them off to the building department.
Building department? Okay, so it appears, if my arithmetic is correct, that the awning itself is approximately 143 square feet, because it's 430 inches long by 48 inches wide. But no one has said anything to you about that up to this point, that would require a variance, is that correct?
No one's mentioned that, no.
Okay.
I
So-
actually submitted, sorry,
Go ahead.
I submitted that, that application in, and that's when, I got in contact with Tom about everything going on, the food handler's license. It's kind of where everything started. It was really the sign application.
I see, okay. So
So no
that-
one mentioned, no one said anything about a sign.
Right, okay. But again, the sign itself conforms, so it's the awning which would require a variance, because as Mr. Costa pointed out in his letter, the ordinance limits awnings to a total of 35 square feet. And obviously this would exceed that. It would match, though, the existing building in a sense, correct? I mean, there's an awning over the existing entrance to the restaurant.
Yes, the other side has an awning over the entrance and the other three, I guess, emergency doors in the front, or the French doors, whatever they are in the front.
And is that one piece or is that separate pieces? I don't see.
There's three. It's one over each door, and plus the entrance itself. So 4 total.
And then, so this would be the fifth. So clearly the square footage, if we were to consider it one building, even though it's 2 lots, and as an aside, Mr. Walter advised me before the hearing began that the 911 officer in the borough wants 2 separate street addresses, one for the restaurant, one for the cafe. So we'll just have to sort that out as to what numbers, would be 570, and I guess the other one would be 572. But in any event, so we would amend our application to include the fact that the awnings exceed the 35 square feet. And in addition, they may not project more than 5 feet into the required front yard. Well, the building itself encroaches into the required front yard, so clearly the awning would as well. But the proposed awning would not interfere, to your knowledge, with the sight distance of anyone who's coming up Van Buren that wants to get onto Kinderkmack Road. The proposed awning wouldn't interfere with them being able to see any oncoming traffic or anything, correct?
It shouldn't, no.
Because it's higher than the front door.
It's high enough, yes.
Okay. And then maybe you could just describe the improvements that were made to the former Dante's. What did you do in there?
We pretty much gutted it, did a full demo, took it down to bare wall, reframed, insulated, sheetrock, new electric, we have new panels, new plumbing. We added we added 2 restrooms for the customers and for the employees as well. That's really it. New flooring. There was some structural work to connect the 2 kitchens. So the back of the kitchen where Sanducci's was before, when it was Sanducci's, I guess it was a separate building at the time. It was an addition. Don't really know the exact details on that. But we blew through the cinder block. We put some structural, some steel framing in there to connect the 2 for support. We put some foundation, we put some footings into the basement as well for that. That's just really it.
And You've also been involved with the restaurant itself, haven't you, over the years,
Yeah,
being a family member?
I help whenever I can. It's my father-in-law's place.
So you heard me ask your brother-in-law, to your knowledge, has there ever been any parking problems? Not enough spaces for the patrons or,
No,
and
even on a full
similarly,
night, usually there's still some empty spots in the back.
and then similarly, no problem with using the spaces as they're currently configured?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And to your knowledge too, since your father-in-law took over, there hasn't been any change to the parking lot. No one has restriped it or changed the spaces in any way.
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much how we got it.
And there was a request in Mr. Costa's letter that the front spaces be restriped, and you're agreeable to having that done, correct?
Yes, in front of the, that's where I was confused. Is that in front of the existing model or the new addition side where Dante's is?
Where Dante's is. That's where there's,
yeah.
I believe it's 5 spaces.
Yes.
And
We actually would prefer to do that because people park sideways. We lose a lot of parking up there. People just don't know how to park.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Yilmaz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barron's?
Just as a point of clarification pertaining to the awning, the requirement is that you can't have an awning more than 35 feet projected into a required front yard area. So that, being that the building has a non-conforming front yard setback, the awning exceeds 35 square feet. So it technically triggers the need for a variance as captured in Mr. Costa's review. It would seem to be consistent with the other awnings on the building. It doesn't seem to be a major issue. And if anything, might enhance the aesthetics of the building. Regarding the sign, technically it's a hair over what's permitted. This is a channel lit sign, which allows for a maximum of 20 square feet. You're at 20.33 square feet. We could probably call that de minimis. And the board, I defer to the board how they want to handle that. Beyond that, the use seems to fit. I would note if the applicant wanted to volunteer or if the board were interested, that it could probably use a little landscaping at the northwest corner of the site. But other than that, I think it's a decent application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barnes. Mr. Costa?
I certainly agree with Mr. Barron's, and again, I think it's obviously that space has been vacant for quite some time, so it's probably a good thing to get it reused and get it back on the books. And again, I think the variance for the parking would be the biggest thing, but certainly that's been covered many years ago, and certainly you heard testimony from the applicant that parking isn't an issue, and we certainly would hear about it if parking was an issue there, because when Sanducci's originally opened up, that was a big issue way back when. And I haven't heard anything. So I wish them, if the board approves it, I wish them good luck and the very best.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costa. Okay, I'm going to open to the board at this time. Mr. Cray, we'll start with you.
No questions. I'll just confirm the comment that parking there seems to be fine. I've been in the restaurant several times when it's been very busy in the restaurant. There's been no issues getting parking spaces there. So other than that, no questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cray. Mr. Esposito?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Boland?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Bustede?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arakelian?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibbons?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Pfeffer?
No questions.
All right. Mr. Merman?
A question or two. You're rehabbing the interior in the kitchen area. Are you installing any new cooking devices that would require exhausting?
So we submitted the plans for the hood as well, so there is a new hood system for that, new makeup air. There will be a new Ansel system as soon as the appliances arrive. So yeah, there's a new pizza oven, an additional pizza oven, a grill, and a stove. And
Does
I
your,
think we're gonna have a fryer as well.
that's standard, yeah. Does your exhaust system contain any charcoal filtration or anything like that?
Not that I know of, no.
Not that you know of. Normally, we.
I'm not familiar with hoods, so I don't really know how to answer that. I know it just exhausts to the outside. That's it.
Yeah, would you agree that if there were any issues with smells, you'd come back and consult with our borough engineers and see what we can do to eliminate or reduce those?
Of course.
Okay, that's usually our concern. Do I understand that you're also testifying regarding the parking?
Yes.
Yes. I'm gonna put it to you this way. Mr. Costa issued a report regarding that addressed handicap. I believe his report said that you needed 3 total handicap spaces plus 1 van. I'd like to hear you address that with Mr. Costa.
What, Mr. Merman, if I may, I Googled that myself and found that the ADA standards only apply when there is new construction or an alteration of previously constructed parking spaces. So I don't think that this really falls within either of those parameters.
Mr. Costa, you agree with that? It was your comment.
Actually, this just came up on another application that I'm working on also. That might be correct. Because they're not doing any site improvements, it probably, and no expansion to the building, it probably will not trigger that.
Okay.
But as you know, Mr. Merman, the ADA falls under the Department of Justice. The only way to really find out is if someone sues. And then you'll find out whether or not it's correct.
All right. Let me say one other thing regarding the handicap. From a practical standpoint, Mr. Barrett, I think that if you're going to restripe that portion in front of the cafe, it would probably behoove you to move the handicap spot up there. Because right now your handicap spot's down in the lower field and you're asking a handicapped person to climb 1 story just for the main level, never mind the need for the 2nd or 3rd floor. So I'd like to see you perform that practical relocation.
Mr. Yilmaz, do you think that would be possible?
I don't see why not. We have 5 spaces, you said, I think.
I mean, I think, Mr. Merman, what may happen is we may lose the space as a result.
That's true. That's probably true. But you have, do you not have more than enough parking spaces?
Oh, yes. No, I'm just saying, just so that the board could recognize that instead of providing 51 spaces, we may only have 50.
I don't think that becomes an issue, does it?
Just want to get the record straight.
All right,
That's all.
I'll let the board answer that for themselves. But I think from a practical standpoint, it would make sense to not only the restaurant, but the cafe and the tenants above, that at least 1 handicap spot that you say is only required would be more advantageous to a
Okay,
handicapped individual.
no problem.
Okay,
We will do that.
all right. I think that's the only comments I have at this point.
Hey,
So
thank you,
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. I just have one question, Mr. Barrett, just the existing entrance on the plans, looks like is what's going to be utilized for access to the space. Just a question is whether that's going to be sufficient to allow for handicap access, given that it's a single door there.
Alan, do you know if,
I'm sorry?
did you know if that's sufficient to allow, say a wheelchair?
I think it's a 36-inch door. I think that's the minimum for wheelchair access, or for ADA, I guess, compliant.
Okay.
If I may interrupt, Mr. Barrett, I think your architect showed it on drawing A-02, that new cafe entrance with the wheelchair radius and everything in it.
Okay, thank you,
If
Mr. Murphy.
you might wind up considering where we would normally have a ramp. There's a curb there now. You might have to cut that curb wider and make it a field adjustment, but I'll let you work that out when you lay that area out.
You mean from the parking area to?
Yeah, from the parking area to the front door. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So yeah, you might have to do some adjustment, but that's up to your design team.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm sorry, may I?
Sure.
I think there might be one, I guess, a ramp between the actual parking and that sidewalk that's in front of the store, in front of the door. I think there actually is a path there.
There is, but what I'm referring to is right now you have a raised curb in
Okay.
that sidewalk to the parking asphalt. You're going to have to cut that clear and locate a pathway next to your parking stall.
Okay.
It's
Got it.
just some design work you have to do in there.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, let's open the meeting to the public for comments on this application only. I may have a motion from the board.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Busty. May I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Boland. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this time, we're now open to the public for comment on this application only. If there's anyone in the public who wishes to be heard on this application.
There are some members of the public, Mr. Landman and Ms. Filer Fluger. If you'd like to be heard on this application, please raise your hand. All right, doesn't look like it.
All right. That being the case, I will entertain a motion to close the meeting to the public for this application.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. I have a second.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Boland. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this time, we're closed to the public. All right. Any further comments, questions from the board? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion on this application, please.
Mr. Chairman, may I be the volunteer to start to piece this motion together?
Please proceed, Mr. Merman.
Okay, regarding the site plan application for Grill House LLC, T/A Mado Cafe, 570 Kinderkamack Road, Block 804, lots 1 and 2. That the board approve this application for full handler's license with the following variances included. We need a variance for the awning, at least one for the sign. And we also, if I was listening correctly, a variance for the projection of the awning into the front yard. I believe that we need a variance for the sign itself over the awning, and that would be for the distance below the window, if I read one of the Mr. Merritt's report correctly. The applicant, do we have any other variances? I don't remember if there were. The applicant agrees to restripe the parking spaces at the Kinderkamack level in front of the proposed cafe, and at the same time relocate the handicap parking space that is now at the lower level to this new area in front of the cafe. And I believe I've got most of it, if not all of it, and somebody wants to build on that, I'll be happy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Merritt. Any additions to? I think you
Uh,
covered everything. Ms.
I
Steinle?
think what we had, there was also the condition about if there were any issues with the smells, the applicant agreed to consult with the borough engineer.
Yes, that's correct. I missed that. My own suggestion, I forgot. Okay.
And then the last one that I had was that there will be 2 separate street addresses for the restaurant and the cafe.
Yes, that was per the fire department request apparently. So you could probably call one 570, the other 578, but I'm gonna let you work that out. That's minor. If that was
Right.
the only problem we had, it would be great.
Just, do we need to address the parking, or is that covered from the previous variance that was passed, whenever that was, 2015?
So the last thing is that the applicant will be permitted to a total of 50 parking spaces, including at least 1 ADA space.
Perfect.
Okay, with those addenda to Mr. Merman's motion,
I'll second.
have a second. Mr. Gibbons, thank you. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes,
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Oh. Did we, Mr. Esposito?
yes.
Okay. And Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Congratulations and good.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Best of luck.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Our next agenda item this evening is under discussion, is a request for reconsideration. Dark Star Development LLC is the applicant. Property is 335 Johnson Avenue, block 1405, lot 3. We did receive a request for reconsideration of this application. I'm going to ask our attorney, Ms. Steinle, to at this time explain some procedural matters.
Okay, yes, so on the 24th, I'll just go through the history of what occurred and what needs to occur now. On the 24th, the board denied the application, which included a D6 variance. The applicant's attorney requested that we hold off on adopting the resolution so the applicants could submit a request for rehearing. And the applicant consented to an extension of the time for the board to prepare its resolution. The applicant submitted the rehearing request letter on Monday. The next steps that the board has to take is that the board has to vote on whether to permit a rehearing based on the letter request, and no additional notice is needed for the board's vote. The motion to permit the rehearing has to be made by a board member who voted yes on the application. And the vote to permit the rehearing is only a majority vote. So it only needs 4 votes out of 3 to rehear. But the application, if the rehearing is approved, the board clerk will reschedule a hearing, and the applicant has to renotice. And then the vote on the application as presented on the rehearing will still, as long as it includes the D variance, it will still need a 5-2 vote to pass. So generally, a board can't rescind its action once it's taken. However, there is a legal basis for reconsideration. If the applicant doesn't believe that the facts were applied to the law, that's not a slight to the board's decision-making abilities. It's just a different interpretation, asking for the reconsideration. That's the summary. And if you have any questions on the procedure, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, just to be clear, for the benefit of the board, we're not looking to take action on this evening in light of the fact that we just received this request. This is merely just a discussion just on the procedural aspects as Ms. Steinle just articulated. So if you have any questions relative to the procedure, please feel free to ask, but we'll take up action on the actual request itself at a subsequent meeting. In all likelihood, it'll be placed on the agenda for the next meeting, depending upon the room on the agenda for that meeting.
Question.
Mr. Merman.
So tonight's meeting regarding this was only to inform us of the situation. I understand that the board, if it votes we have to take a separate vote at another time as to whether they hear this or not. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, that's fine. So we don't take any action at all tonight.
There's no action on the request this evening. This was
Okay.
merely because the request had been received. It was just to
Right.
acknowledge the receipt of the request, and for the context and the benefit of the board in reviewing the request. Ms. Steinle went through the procedural aspects, so you have the
Yes.
information available to you at your disposal in reviewing the request.
Fine, thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gibbons.
So just so I know what that next, so if we were to vote to have this next hearing, would we go through the whole thing again? Would we be bringing back their professionals? You know, what would that, I guess, rehearing look like?
So the applicant could present evidence and testimony to support the proposed changes discussed in the request for the rehearing. It's mainly to rehear what was said, to clarify what was said at the prior hearing, necessarily to present. So possibly testimony, but most likely some supportive documentation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Kelly? Yep.
At one point, I read the letter from Mr. Sarlo, and he quoted several deficiencies in the law and so forth. When will that be addressed to the board in regard to what he had written in his letter? And would that be Marina that would be discussing that or arbitrating that, or would it be Mr. Sarlo explaining what he meant by the things that he put in there?
Well, Marina, you want to answer that?
Yep, so prior to the vote, on our rehearing, Mr. Sarlo can provide, can be given an opportunity to describe the letter to the board. And then if the board does approve the rehearing, then additional testimony from our professionals can be made to clarify the record.
Okay.
And
So I'm clear on this. Misapplication of fact as well as law is what he states in his letter. Now, misapplication of fact, is he saying that there was incorrect factual data or that we just heard things wrong? I mean, I'm trying to understand what that means.
Let him explain it.
I don't necessarily want to get into the merits of the letter
Mhm.
at this point, Mr. Cray. I think what we'll do is we'll schedule a separate executive session to review this. I think at that time that would be the appropriate forum to discuss some of those questions. We'll probably end up doing that. We unfortunately, due to the limitations we have right now, as a practical matter, physically not being in a room, we cannot go into executive session due to the limitations of Zoom. So we're going to have to do that separately. So for now, as I said before, it's merely at this stage, we're just acknowledging receipt of the request, just providing some context as to the process moving forward to review the request. If you have any questions on the procedural aspects, that's really what all we're going to take up at this juncture this evening. So not saying your question's not valid, Mr. Craig, but let's just hold off on that for the time being. So if there are any other questions procedurally as to the matter,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pfeffer?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a procedural question. I just want to inform you as chairman and also the board, and also sort of give a heads up to the applicant that if we put this matter on the agenda for June 28th, it's likely that I will not be in attendance that evening. And since I was somebody who spoke on the matter and voted on the matter previously, I just thought in fairness, I should let people know that there's a good chance, a likelihood that I won't be able to make that meeting.
Okay, appreciate the information. I mean, the logistical aspects of things will have to be accounted for. So
Sure.
Thanks for the heads up. Okay, any other questions procedurally at this point? Okay. Our next agenda item then this evening is under board member comments. Mr. Merman requested some time this evening to address the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, we approved an application on the southeast corner of Concord Drive and Fifth Avenue. I don't have the house number, but it was block 705, lot 1. That application and hearing and memorialization addressed a existing large Texas yew, which was about 8 to 10 feet high and roughly 15 to 20 feet in diameter at the corner, which was inhibiting the sight distance on the uphill side there to Fifth Avenue. We voted to have that removed and all, and that construction looks like it's finished, but that shrub has not been removed yet. And I guess I'm going to ask the board professionals who gets that removed and gets that project completed according to the memorialization.
So I'll try to address that. So you are correct in that the construction is wrapping up. So what I have in my possession now is the as-built survey to review compliance with the board's approval. And so I plan to address that shortly and expect to have it come down. So
wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Merman, thank you. Any further business from the board? Comments? All right. Silence being golden, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Gibbons. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Cray. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? All right, we stand adjourned
Good night.
at 8:32
Night,
PM.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good Father's Day.
Yeah, happy Father's Day, Jess.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Father's Day.